to the Upshot, Cultural Disc Golf's podcast about the latest in the disc golf world. I am Charlie Eisenhood. He is Josh Mansfield. It is Wednesday, April 19th. We are releasing this podcast one day earlier than usual because tomorrow the Champions Cup begins. The first major of the season, the springtime major. Josh, it's going to be 85 degrees, sunshine, and on a W.R. Jackson course that is, I think, going to be the most beautiful course we've got on tour so far this season.
It's going to be incredible. You know, and you mentioned the weather and how it's going to be so gorgeous. Here's what I'm really excited about, actually, though. From 12 to 3 p.m. on Saturday, rain is projected. I love a good moving day storm.
Josh, why do you wish this on him? Oh, no.
I don't want a ton. I don't want like torrential downpour. I don't want anything like we saw at North Cove. But just a little bit of weather, just to like kind of press at the nerves a little bit on moving day when you're trying to make a cut line. Like I live for that stuff.
There's not actually a cut, is there?
Is there not? I thought there would be.
I don't think they have. I don't know. I haven't heard anything about a cut for this tournament. Maybe
4 round.
They should have a cut
tournament
for all 4-round tournaments. I agree. I'm with you there. Well, we've got a really fun preview show for you today. We're going to be talking with Nate Heinold, the TD, in a little bit. Ask him about the course, the changes, the registration situation. Obviously, we've got the full Champions Cup Monday qualifying all finished up. A couple of people have also gotten in off the wait list. And this is kind of like a weird thing, Josh. They ran the Monday qualifier. Mm-hmm. They gave away the spots. And then the wait list reverted back to who signed up first. And then a couple of people have dropped. We'll talk about injuries and absences a little bit later when we get to the preview section. But then people were getting in off the top of the wait list instead of off the next on the leaderboard of the qualifier. Right. What do you think about that?
Man, I think that it's perfect given that everything else has been handled in this situation. Like, man, I get that that's their, like, the plan is, or the policy is to let them in based on timing. I like the adjustment, though, especially because I think as you go through the wait list, I don't know. It's interesting. I would be interested to know if we use qualifying tournaments in the future, do you use the qualifiers to bring people in, or is it just wait lists?
This was an ad hoc qualifier created to try to salvage some of this error. That's what it is.
Yeah, it is.
This probably won't happen again.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe they can establish a normal Monday qualifying option. I'm fine with that.
Sure.
But like, this was designed to try to like get some people into the tournament. The people who got in, by the way, James Conrad shot a 7 under, pretty nice round. Chandler Fry, Aaron Gossage, Nate Perkins, Matt Dollar, Dylan Horst, Tim Barham, Andrew Presnell, and that is your list in MPO. And what that means, of course, is that players like Ezra Aderhold, Kevin Jones, Andrew Marwee did not get in. They have also not gotten in off the wait list, so they're not going to be playing. Uh-huh. Over in FPO, 5 players for 4 spots. Jessica Weiss, Silva Saarinen, Emily Beach, Haley Childs get in, but Leah Sinigini got in merely minutes after this qualifier because of a drop. So everybody who wants to play an FPO is in. They actually have 1 open spot. So, hey, you want to head down
Georgia,
there? Call a PDGA.
Yeah.
Let's go. I'm trying to become a major champion. Okay, more to come on Champions Cup stuff. But first, Bradley Wililams, we talked a lot about last week and the crazy ending to the Blue Ridge Champions. What was it called? Blue Ridge Championship? These names are so long, I get lost.
The Innova Blue Ridge Championship at North Cove.
At North Cove.
Yeah.
Powered by...
God,
they didn't do that, but they will, I'm sure.
Everybody stop it.
Bradley Wililams went on Instagram and shared some thoughts on what happened at the end of the tournament and why he didn't go for it on 18. Listen.
I'm getting a lot of hate from you guys because of the lame finish that I had. So let's just make a few things clear. I had opportunities to play better on holes 7, 8, 9, and I didn't. And I airballed the putt for birdie on 11. So there was strokes on the course that I didn't take advantage of. And going into 13, after our lightning delay, my plan was to see if I could focus up really hard on 13 and 14 and 15 and get birdies. 16 sort of a dice roll. And then once I got 16, the plan was to play safe on 17 and then play aggressive on 18. And the only reason that I couldn't play aggressive is because we got the freak weather that came out of nowhere. And the difference between second place and fourth place monetarily is enough to consider that. I'm thankful that I have sponsors that allow me to play. I make just enough money to be on the road, but I'm not like some of these other players that make so much money they can just play for the fans. They can just play all out for the win every time.
So there you have it. Bradley Wililams, Josh, basically vindicating your take 100% and said the money mattered more than the very, very slim chance that I could win the tournament. And you know what? To me, I will say I am chastened. I believe that I think this gives me fresh insight into what a grind the tour is for the vast majority of players. Bradley Wililams, I don't even necessarily think I would say Bradley Wililams is like a mid-tier player. Like, he's an upper-tier disc golfer. He's not somebody who's finishing 50th all the time. Mm-hmm. Like, this dude is up on the leaderboard on a regular basis and has like, did he win an elite last year or was it silver? I can't remember
last
now.
Year, wasn't it?
He won preserve. Like, he's really good. And yet it is such a grind that he's choosing to make that extra $600 to $1,000 over the very slim chance. And I acknowledge, very slim chance to win. Thoughts on it, Josh?
Yeah, that's a couple of thoughts on that. Number one is that is kind of the impression I had gotten. And it's something that had stuck in my mind ever since we interviewed Casey White 2 years ago. When Casey White told us, he's like, yeah, you remember we interviewed him. I don't remember what tournament it was. He played really, really well, took like third at a tournament podium and made a nice payout. And he's like, I was about ready to go home and go make some money so I could go back on tour. And this payout kept me on there. Right. And now Casey White was finishing a little bit lower, but then he talked about other players who are, struggling and not having the support that they need in order to stay on tour without tournament winnings. And I think part of it, and I saw some people saying, this is an indictment of Innova, right? Innova needs to be paying their players better, probably. But I also look at, when you think about these as endorsement deals and as what they are, right? The guys and the people at the top who are making all sorts of money are moving plastic to justify that money. I don't know how much plastic Bradley Wililams is moving, but I can't tell you if his sales and his contract are fair. I don't know any of the details. But it's astounding. After you get out of the top even 10 guys, how fast that falls off in terms of like sales and being able to move plastic. Anthony Barella, a really amazing, noticeable player. I couldn't tell you what his Tour Series disc is this year. I don't remember. Right? Cole Redolin, Mason Ford, Isaac Robinson. I'm just reading down the DGPT standings, right? Like, tell me what those guys' discs are right now.
I agree with you.
And that's...
there's a reason the financial rewards are accumulating to the top 1%.
Yeah. And so, as a result, those tournament winnings and taking that extra $1,000 is a big deal. And that's kind of my impression of people around that level who don't move, a large amount of plastic. And I hope the rising tide lifts all boats, right? I hope that those players continue to benefit from the growth of the sport and get to increase their salary. I don't want this. That's kind of why my perception was already in this direction when we had this first discussion.
Yeah. And I think it will. I think it has.
Yes.
I think that exists. But I also think this goes to show you that there's a value proposition of, would I rather, I have a 95% chance to win an extra $600 or whatever it was. Or I have maybe 99% chance. I have a 1% chance to force a playoff where I still might finish second. And that calculate, like, the value of winning the silver event isn't high enough to justify going for it. And I think that sucks, right? I think you should be thinking about, okay, what are the incentive structures to make it so that winning is really, really beneficial? And like, hopefully we can get there. And we've gotten emails on both sides of this.
Yeah, we have.
Wayne said, yes, he secured more cash. Yes, he probably earned a bigger bonus, assuming that he, goes and wins it. But also, if he goes for it and misses and goes OB, he has done what everybody would do, quote unquote, everybody. And he is an afterthought when discussing the tournament. As it is, almost everyone I have heard talking and seen posting about the event is mentioning Bradley more than they are mentioning the guy who won, who, by the way, we haven't even really said his name during this entire show yet. This may be the only tournament I remember that did not go to a playoff, and the person who got second will be remembered. Good job, Bradley. I like that. That's a counterintuitive take there.
Yeah, it is.
Bradley actually did more for his chances to get disc sales by laying up.
Jason also mentioned the other factor. He qualified for USDGC thanks to his placement.
Good point.
Which may not have been the case as he goes for it and falls down. So that's another really strong point, I think.
Most people who I have seen comment on YouTube or email us have agreed with Josh. And I think now would say they probably agree with Bradley, given the discussion that he had on Instagram. We did get an email from Rob who said he was with me 100%. What we watched from Williams on Sunday was the move of someone who wants to be safe, not someone who wants to win. It was depressing to watch as a fan. And he says the path to getting out of a van is not limping along for 500 extra bucks here and there along the way by placing slightly higher. Wins are the path to getting out of the van. Bradley is no Matty O or Brody Smith who can garner following because of their personality. He needs to win if he's going to get the bigger contract and the fan base. He says, no, he doesn't owe us fans a spectacle. No, he didn't get robbed. But yes, he is playing as a pro in an increasingly viewership-driven sport. What we saw Sunday does not make fans want to go buy his Tour Series discs or wear Bradley Williams merch. I get the take. I do. I don't necessarily, and I do think that like winning the event would have been good for Bradley. I think the question is, it wasn't a 20% putt. We can all agree on that. It probably wasn't even a 5% putt. So like, it wasn't even a putt, right? He just has to throw it in.
Right.
So like the odds of him getting that, forcing the playoff and then winning it in the playoff they're very small because you have, they're less than 1% by the time you also consider that he's probably 50-50 at best in a playoff.
Yeah.
So, I think it was a rational choice.
And the other point to this is like, let's say his van breaks down and that extra $1,000 lets him fix it and keep him on the road, right? Like there are real logistical concerns about players who may have to like not tour at times because of financial concerns or unexpected events. And you say, $500 doesn't get you out of a van, but it might keep you in the van, right? And not send you on a different career as a region, you're playing regionally and now working, selling insurance or something, right? Just doing another job. So.
I want the incentive structures to change so that choice is more aligned with him saying, I'm going for it. It doesn't matter if I go OB and I finish fourth. Yeah. I'm going for it because the money that I will win if I win, the bonus that I will get from my sponsors, the things that accrue to me by winning are worth enough that I will choose that over this guaranteed extra cash. And I mean, we're just not there yet. I don't know when we're going to get there. I think Rob overstates a little bit the value of winning a silver, right? He's won an elite.
Yeah.
And like that hasn't changed his career dramatically. you have to be up there every week or winning multiple events over the course of the season.
Yeah.
So anyway,
there was a really one last thing in the Discord that a lot of people were chatting about this, and someone proposed what later got coined as the "go for it" clause, where a manufacturer talks to their player and is like, "Look, if you're in a Bradley Williams-esque situation, we will make up the difference of whatever you lose by going for it." So if Bradley Williams loses out on $1,000 by going OB, the manufacturer says, "Look, we'll make up that $1,000 as long as you promise to always go for it if you are in a situation like that."
And that's what I'm talking about,
Yeah.
because they have an incentive for their players to try to win the tournament too.
Yes.
They don't. I think it's kind of embarrassing to have players be like, "I didn't go for it because I don't get enough money from my sponsors."
It's not a good look.
I mean, I'm not saying that they owe him more money or anything, but I do think it's a little embarrassing.
Yeah. That.
Okay. Before we get to our interview with Nate Heinold, we were talking on the show came out Monday. We decided to release it on Monday about Statmando having Calvin Heimberg at number 1. And UDisc having Gannon Burr at number 1. Well, Josh, how about this? We ran the Ultiworld Disc Golf World Rankings this week. 2 years, very stable, slow time decay, emphasizes the strength of the field and the purse size as a way of sort of evaluating the importance of events. And when we ran the numbers, Paul Macbeth came out as your number 1 player right now in the world. And the PDGA, Josh, has Ricky Wysocki at number 1 in the world. Now, I will caveat that and say that they last ran their world rankings at the end of the 2022 season. I believe their first update for this year will be following Champions Cup.
Okay.
So, but that means you have the 4 major rankings with 4 different players at number 1 in MPO, which I think is just interesting. Of course, they all agree Christian Tatar is number 1. I think it's interesting because obviously we can argue about who's playing the best right now in 2023. But if you go back 2 years, which doesn't mean to the beginning of 2022, it means to April 2021.
Yep.
And you think about who's been the best player over those 2 years. Even if you give more weight to more recent times, it's not clear.
Huh.
I mean, Calvin's been the best player in 2023. Ricky was the best player in 2022. Paul's been the best player at the majors. And Gannon, over the last 6 months, has as many, if not more, wins than Calvin and has won bigger events, including USDGC. So, and was the most consistent player other than Ricky last year. That's pretty interesting.
It's really fascinating, and I think what it does highlight is really because the reason Paul is still in this is on this ranking, and the reason Gannon also is above Calvin in this case is because these different systems play different weights into majors primarily, right? That the reason why Ultiworld and UDisc don't agree with PDGA and Statmando having Ricky and Calvin, because that's the time factor, right? The Calvin versus Ricky is just a time decay. It's the means by which they factor that, or the recency of the update in the case of PGA. The reason Ultiworld and UDisc don't agree is because of time, right? UDisc is looking at a more recent than the Ultiworld one. But
it's hard to know exactly without going into the
my
deep
speculation.
black box of how they do it. Yeah. But yeah, it is potentially the reason, yes.
Right. So that's my speculation there as to why those sides disagree. But this, I think, is still demonstrating an understanding of how we as a sport are trying to evaluate and reckon with majors and what they mean and the value of majors. And that's why you see the diversity in this ranking, right? It's not just time, because if it was just time, you would establish some sort of consensus. But majors are still a point in the sport that we are trying to understand the importance. And anybody who listens to the show knows that you and I are very, very, very bullish on majors. But there are people who agree with Ricky. When Ricky comes out and says, I would rather be consistent. I'd rather win 5 events. I don't know if I believe him, but he says it, right? And he's at least, it seems like he's almost convinced himself that it's true as well. And people,
he's consistent on that point.
He is consistent on that point. And then people agree with Ricky, right? They're like, yeah, like I'd rather do what Rick does. I'd rather win week in and week out. And like, if I don't play well at the majors, oh well, right? I've got a couple world championships in the back pocket, like whatever. And so it is a sport still trying to handle majors. I think it's also due to a history of majors that kind of came and disappeared pretty fluidly, which is why, Eagle has the Kona Piste Open. I think the Australian Open was a major one year, and there were like 3 top level touring players there, just
correct.
So majors were underemphasized in the past. And I think there is a course correction right now, and it will take time for the general attitude and consensus around that course correction to kind of agree on that importance and the weight. But that's what this difference in rankings says to me right now.
Yeah,
is what do we do with majors?
Yeah, speaking to the Ulti World Disc Golf rankings, I mean, the reason Paul is at number 1 is because he wins. He has more wins and plays better at the majors than literally anybody else over the last 2 years.
Yep.
Because the majors have the deepest fields by far, especially Worlds, the biggest payouts. And if they have, in our system, if a tournament has a lot of 1,000 rated players and a huge payout, you get a big bonus for winning that tournament or playing well at those tournaments. And that's why, for instance, Simon Lizotte is at number 10 in the Ulti World rankings.
Wow.
Now, I think some people look at that and be like, that's crazy. He's at number 10. But look at his majors performance.
Oh.
Look at his majors performance over the last 2 years. He hasn't finished inside the top 15. He's been bad at the biggest tournaments. Mm-hmm. And I think I certainly have no problem. If somebody quibbles and they say, it's ridiculous that Simon's at number 10. Look how many tournaments he's won over the last 2 years. I don't even argue with you necessarily. I think it's like, maybe we need to think about it. Do we need to tune it differently? But at the end of the day, it's not as much about the wins as it's about where you win and when you play your best. And playing your best against better people with more money on the line, I think it makes logical sense that those are the tournaments that should be emphasized in a ranking, because those are generally going to be majors or very important Elite Series tournaments like Ledgestone, like Portland Open, like MVP, the tournaments that I think pros care the most about, and that as fans we should care the most about. It's easy to just get caught up in the week to week of the tour, but later in the season, I'm not going to remember some of these bummy tournaments in the middle of this stretch. So it's an interesting thing to think about.
Here's the highlight, right? Like, top of your head right now, without thinking about it, could you tell me all the tournaments that Ricky and Simon won? I could get most of them.
No, but I mean, I feel like that's a little bit of an unfair thing, because like the only reason I can remember the tournaments Paul won is because one of them was Worlds.
Well, right, but if I asked you the question, who won the majors last year? Chris,
oh, sure.
Eagle, Paul, Gannon, done. Right? Like, don't even have to think about it. That was
right.
You just know, and
you just know
because the majors are important.
Okay, I want to move on. Ricky dropped out.
Yes.
He's hurt. I assume it's the wrist. He hasn't posted about it. Sucks. I wish he hadn't played this past weekend, because it probably would have meant he was going to be good to go for this weekend. People have been kind of dogging him online a little bit about it and posting about how he hasn't won a major in 6 years and 47 days and whatever, blah, blah, blah. Which, okay, fair enough. Right. We've talked about it. Ricky's kind of he's been this number 1 guy and hasn't been able to win at the biggest tournaments lately. But here's the thing. You're going to come out here and you're going to dog on Ricky for not winning in 6 years. Where's the wins for these guys? Calvin's never won a major. Simon's never won a major. The pressure's on these guys to back up all of the elite series success that they've had over these last 2 years and show up at the big ones. That's what you got to love about a major, right? That's what I'm excited for this weekend. Can they get there first? I want to see if they can win. I want to see if they can overcome that. Because I know Chris Dickerson can. I know Paul can. I'm almost ready to say I know Gannon can.
why not? Like, I think that's
he's got one. Yeah. That's fair.
Yeah.
James Conrad could show up and win this weekend. I know that.
Someone wrote a lengthy email defending James Conrad and saying he's his pick to win this weekend.
That would be insane.
I read the whole thing. I want you to know. I'll see whose name it was. I just want to give him a shout out because they deserve credit for writing that novel.
and picking James. That's a bold call.
Yeah, it was.
But why not? We're in the woods.
Right?
Don't forget, we're in the woods. Like, it's a whole different ball game. There's a whole new set of players who can compete. So we're going to get into all of that in just a moment. Josh, who was the email from?
It was Brent. So Brent writes in, and the line, it is addressed, all right, Charlie and Josh, buckle up. And then it is paragraph after paragraph about James Conrad defense. It was good. It was a good one, too.
Love it. I'll put it in the mailbag. Okay. So we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, Nate Heinold will join us, TD of Champions Cup, to talk about what's going on down at the IDGC. And when we get back after that, we're going to make our picks and break down WR Jackson. Stay with us.
Pound's the best of the best. It's the quality, the craftsmanship, the vision for what a bag could be. Let's start from the beginning. I didn't choose Pound, I chose Levi. I trusted Levi to make the best bag possible.
He's always trying to innovate. He wants it to be perfect. And I think he's the kind of guy that nothing's ever perfect.
I trust the product. I trust the people behind the product.
At this point, I don't think anyone's disputing that it's the best made bag.
Joining us now on the Upshot is Nate Heinold, who is the TD of this weekend's Champions Cup and, of course, the PDGA Board of Directors President. Nate, hello. Welcome back.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Thanks for coming on. I know it's a busy week for you. So, first and foremost, I know you're at the IDGC right now. How's the property looking? How's the course looking ahead of the start tomorrow?
It looks amazing. The PDJ staff and the IDGC staff has gone above and beyond. When we host Ledgestone and Deglow, my staff has to focus on weed whacking and mulching and cutting things down at the last second. And we haven't had to do any of that because they've been working on it for honestly months and weeks. And the property looks great. The weather is great. It's in immaculate shape.
I love to hear it. I mean, one of the beautiful things about the Masters is that it just looks so beautiful on television. And so I'm hoping we get the same energy from this course. I actually want to go back for a second to last year because this tournament was not supposed to be at WR Jackson again initially. It was going to move up to the toboggan course and be run, in lieu of Deglow. And then the decision was made to do an about face. How did that all come together, and why was that decision made?
When we first looked at creating this event, the idea was to move it around to other venues, but the decision was made to host it at WR Jackson the first year. And honestly, the PDJ was open to feedback after many players came forward and said, why are you going to get rid of one of the better Elite Series events to host a major? Why not just leave it at Jackson? And we heard those players, and we talked about it and discussed it. And the PJ staff loved the idea. and I was comfortable. My wife didn't love it because it's one more week that I'm gone for another big event, but it just made sense. And I love this property. And I mean, honestly, the big thing for us is, the players really wanted this, and they wanted this to be a consistent location. And now, I mean, I'm a big golf fan. I grew up watching the Masters, and to have a major in the same location every year, the same week every year, does have appeal. And so I think that really led to the decision to leave it here indefinitely. I mean, we already have, the contract for next year, so it will be back at this course in 2024 as well.
Now, Nate, can we all agree that having match play at the end of a 4-round stroke play tournament would have been a bad plan?
That wasn't the exact format that was approved, but the idea was to have a unique format, and the concept and principle to have a unique format has appeal to me, but I will say that it doesn't make sense for the major that we're hosting here.
So we can all agree.
So
go ahead, Josh.
So my follow up then. Can we see match play at the end of D-Glow this year? That's what I want to see now.
Well, D-Glow is a playoff event this year, so you have to talk to Jeff Spring about that.
Yeah. Tell us about some of the course changes that are being made. I know hole 18 is getting reworked. Are there any other significant course changes from a competitive aspect that are important for people who know this course, who have watched it in years past, especially last year, and what they should expect to see different this year?
I mean, the big changes, there's, I believe, 5, actually. There's 3 new FPO pins. I believe hole 6 and 11 and 13 have shorter pins. And I was on T1 yesterday, and Kristen Tatar said, love the changes for the FPO pins. And you would think, to me, I would think someone like her or Katrina or Paige would say, make it long. But Kristen was right there saying, this is better for the FPO division. So those are the 3 main FPO changes, but the 2 biggest changes that will be most noticeable. Hole 14 was a par 5 that teed off pretty close to the clubhouse, kind of just to the right of hole 1's tee. Kind of was a congested area, an iconic hole. That has been moved. The tee's been moved about 150 feet to the right, kind of where old hole 18's basket was. That will now play as a par 4. And then hole 18 will now finish in the open, providing a grandstand finish. We have, just outside the window I'm in, large bleachers, some out of bounds framing the area. And so that will be the biggest change. That hole will go from playing, I believe hole 18 played as one of the easier holes last year, and now it will play as the hardest hole to par.
Are there any other notable differences about this year's event when it comes to, whether that's course rules or just the way that you're running the event after last year's inaugural?
I mean, certainly we had a different TD last year, and now Robert is an employee of the PDGA, so he wasn't going to host the event again. So anytime you have a new TD, there will be differences. We're trying to enhance the spectator experience. We brought in a massive video board. We brought in grandstands and bleachers. There's probably more course assets than you would see last year. We've expanded some Bushnell Boulevard spectator areas, so there's more opportunities for spectators to view the course. The OB rules are the same as last year, very minimal OB. 18 obviously has, the added OB, but really you're going to see a very similar course, minor tweaks. It's still 4 rounds of stroke play. Not a lot's going to change for the players.
What about on that spectator side? You highlighted the grandstands and the video board. How many? Let's just start with the question: how many spectators are you anticipating at the event this weekend?
We'll probably have 1,000 spectators. This area, the IEDGC is a little bit more remote than Toboggan would have been, and so And it's a heavily wooded course, maybe not as much as like a Northwood Black, but there's only so many spectators that we can fit on these wooded fairways. And some of these wooded fairways, they've opened up the rough a lot to give more viewing opportunities. But the property is actually, situated. If you compare it to a property like Northwood Black, I was just looking at the map last night. Lengthwise, it's very similar in length to a course like Northwood, but the acreage, Northwood Black is double the amount of acreage as the W.R. Jackson course. There's only so many spectators that we can jam in to the 40-acre property here. And so, but I believe, Sunday will be our biggest day. We'll probably have, close to 1,000 spectators.
Well, along with a couple of folks who have dropped out for injury, Ricky Wysocki, Valerie Mondahano, both have already dropped, unfortunately. There's also a number of players who are not going to play for non-injury reasons. Kevin Jones, Andrew Marweed, Ezra Aderhold, all not going to be competing after this registration debacle where you had 25, 30 professional players not able to get into the event because of, they didn't sign up on time, basically. But I'm curious from your perspective, right? Because you sit both as the TD of this tournament and also on the board. I think a lot of people look at this and they blame the players. They say, well, you didn't sign up on time. But on the other hand, we never see this many players not registering for a major in particular. And now you're going to have it go off where you have multiple top 15 players who are not going to be competing. And that's a loss for the fans. So how do you look at this? And is this something that you feel like needs to get fixed for next year? And do you like the way that this was handled? I don't even know if it was your decision or not on Monday qualifying tournament.
I mean, the bottom line is that even in the last few days, actually, I've had a manufacturer reach out to me as the TD and say, hey, I manage these players and their registrations, and this player is dropping. And I looked back at their registration and realized that manufacturer had signed up the players. And so that I think could be an answer to these players not having to do this. In this specific case, I think there was a higher number of players who didn't sign up. And I think being in the first major of the year, the players may have assumed this was a Disc Golf Pro Tour card holder event that just got them into the event. But the bottom line is this is a qualifier event. We had many qualifying events, many players who qualified. Those players got invited to play in the events. Very few of them were rated below 1,000. I believe the AM World Champion and the winner of the Next Gen Finals and AM Nats, I believe. And so you had those kind of people, get into the event by winning, those kind of qualifiers. But certainly the PDGA can always adapt and improve processes, and we'll look to do that for next year on our end. But at the end of the day, I do think player agents, managers, manufacturers are doing some of those things now, and maybe they'll have to do that more. But that doesn't mean that we can't do things on our end as well. When we first created this major, I mean, honestly, the first thing I thought of and the first thing I got asked, because it was something I ran my platform back in 6 years ago, was I wanted to create this major. The first question the staff asked me was, is anybody going to care about this? And this is back in like 2017, 2018, when the idea of creating this major, I mean, is it going to fill? Are people going to care? That was a legitimate concern of mine. And I mean, clearly that's been answered by the players do care now, and it is going to fill. But even back in 2019, Pro Worlds had 50 players could have signed up and it would have been full. Like, we had capacity. Even last year for Pro Worlds, I got a call from somebody and they said, XYZ player has played every Worlds. They want to get in. And the PDJ's response was, there's a spot open. And so, and this was 2 weeks before the event. So it's a great problem to have, that the event has that kind of demand. And as I said, we'll look to do what we can to update our processes in the future.
What might those processes look like, and how this has been a topic that Charlie and I have talked about a couple times on the show. Is the PDGA going to change the way that it interacts with touring professionals relative to just professionals, right? Because that's the PDGA services 250,000 members, not quite that many active, obviously, but amateurs, professionals who are at the local level, as well as touring pros. But it's clear that the needs and the demands of a touring division, I guess you could even call it, are very different than that of your typical professional, just by classification. Are there ways that you see the PDGA adapting to how it treats and interacts with the touring level?
I mean, for, specifically, we could look to use the Disc Golf Pro Tour cardholder list. We have a Premier Pro list that I think we're going to begin utilizing for communications. So certainly, yeah, I mean, there's a difference between Ricky Wysocki and Paul Macbeth and your regional pro. But at the end of the day, the PDGA does have an obligation to all of its members. Certainly we want the best players in the world playing elite series and major events. And we'll look to the Disc Golf Pro Tour for certain processes that make sense, for us.
So, when you think about what's required to succeed out on this course, what comes to mind from a playing perspective?
I mean, if you look at, what Chris did last year to win, it's not, this course, I was just talking to a few top players and they said he asked, one player asked the other player, how many 12-speed drivers are you throwing? Like one hole, that's it. And I think really it's clubbing down and throwing the 9-speed fairway driver on almost every hole. I think that really, you don't have to have power here. Not that Chris doesn't throw far, because he does, but really it's placement shots, the drives are honestly maybe a little bit easier than the second shots here. And so really, it's not about distance. It's about making sure the drive is in the correct spot to then be able to attack the second shot. There's some drives that are obviously very challenging, but a lot of times the second shots at WR Jackson are actually a little more challenging than the drive. And so learning to throw even the mid-range or the fairway, just to get it in the fairway so you can then attack the second shot, I think will allow the player the ability to have the chance to win. And the course is hard, but there are a lot of birdies out there.
All right, Nate, well, we're going to put you on the spot. We always do. Who's winning this weekend?
On the MPO side, I think it could be any of the players registered. No, I think there's, Chris Dickerson has a good chance. Paul Macbeth, I think Calvin could win his first major. Simon could win his first major. Gannon's been playing well. Kyle. On the FPO side, certainly, it sounds like Paige has a potential injury that she posted about, but she's still going to try to play. She loves this course. Kristen, obviously tough to bet against her. I know Katrina Allen loves this course and plays well in the woods. And so there's a lot of parity on the MPO side. I mean, it could be any of 15 people, 20 people. The FPO side, probably, 10 people that could win, but I think those are probably the favorites.
All right. Well, enjoy looks like going to have some beautiful weather out there in the 80s tomorrow. Wow. So enjoy that. And I know that we will all be enjoying it from home.
Look forward to having you guys watch and having the fans watch online on the Disc Golf Network.
All right. Nate Heinold with us here on the Upshot. We'll be right back. Thanks, Nate.
Thank you.
Welcome back to the Upshot. Well, it is finally time. It's time to break down this course, make our picks. First major picks of the year. I feel like the pressure is big time on, Josh.
Oh, definitely is. You know what we need to do? We need to make majors worth more points in our picks.
Let's just make the call right now.
All right,
They're worth double points.
Okay, I love that. I mean,
that seems about right.
It does. And if we say, I mean, we're the ones we were just talking about how important we think the majors are. Like, we got to put our money where our mouth is, right?
Double points.
Double
it's
points.
On the line.
Okay.
We'll get it set up. Make sure you become a subscriber and make your own picks over at discgolf.ultimateworld.com/upshot-picks and see if you can beat me and Josh in our picks competition over the course of the season. We'll get to those in a little bit. First up, I want to go through the injury report and just talk about who's in and who's out this weekend. So as mentioned, a couple people out with an injury. Ricky Wysocki has dropped. Valerie Mondahano will not be making her season debut. I think a lot of us, probably including her, were circling this on the calendar as a potential return spot. Josh, you had the under on Jonesboro.
Yeah.
So now you need her to come back for Jonesboro if you're going to salvage a push in that. But I mean, it's just a bummer because, I mean, I don't, I want to point out, like, poor dynamic discs. Like,
Yeah.
Kona's not playing either. Like, their biggest players are all dealing with injury problems. Brutal. And I this is a course where I feel like Valerie Mondahano could really compete, and we know Ricky can compete out here. So unfortunately, they are not in the field. Worth noting, Paige Pierce has said that she's dealing with shoulder tendonitis in her rotator cuff. She's going to try to play through it, but she's not right. And I to me, that helps make Music City Open make a lot more sense to me, because I didn't understand how Paige could perform that poorly on that layout, but injuries can really make things difficult. And it's too bad. I mean, she's of course trying to defend her Champions Cup title, Josh.
Yeah, combine it with the fact that we've got a 4-round tournament, right? Something like tendinosis, you can.
What was that? Tendinosis? Tendinitis.
Tendinitis.
Tendinosis. Send your emails in, folks. I want to hear your take on tendinosis.
I don't want it. Tendinosis is tendinosis is a real thing, though.
Okay.
Sorry. So tendinosis is a chronic condition of the degeneration.
Tendinitis is a
acute,
specific.
Yes.
Acute.
We talk a lot about tendinosis in physical therapy because we get a lot of older
Makes
patients
sense.
who are suffering that. So my bad. I did misspeak.
Now I'm going to get all the hate emails.
But you said that. I was like, I don't think I'm as wrong as Charlie thinks I am. I'm gonna. But I will admit,
because like in the sports context, I rarely hear.
You never hear tendinosis.
I don't think I've ever heard tendinosis.
Yeah, see, I hear tendinitis significantly less often than I do hear tendinosis. But I will say, as everyone knows, right, I don't have a medical background of any kind. And so there are times I think I know what I'm talking about from like listening to and working around physical therapists, and I use a word and they're like, you're so wrong about that. So I had to double check. Tendinitis, I think the fact that it's a 4-round tournament, right? Because you can rest, you can heal, you can give it kind of that protection and baby it a little bit, and then kind of push through for a couple days. But the longer she is playing day after day after day after day, the worse that's going to get, the more that's going to inhibit her throwing. And even if she plays through it, right, and is able to just the guarding, her swing mechanics are going to be off even if it's not damaging it more, but is in severe pain, right?
Yeah, if you're feeling pain at a certain range of motion, maybe it's hard to fight through and still throw
Force
clean
your
shots.
body to do it. Yeah, exactly. And in the woods, 4 rounds in the woods, this is not what Paige needed.
Yeah, it's too bad. Well, we'll see how she does. It'd be epic if she was able to defend her title, playing through the injury.
Yeah.
Some people didn't get in because they didn't register in time, and then they didn't win. They didn't do well enough in the qualifier. Ezra, Kevin Jones, Garrett Gerthy, Andrew Marweed, some of the bigger names that are not going to be playing. Ezra's number 4 in the DGPT standings, and he's not playing in the major. I mean, this is to me, again, I just want to go back to it. This is a failure by the PDGA. And I can feel them digging their heels and saying, well, they should have registered on time, or they should have played better in the qualifier. And I'm like, well, you should just give them a spot in the tournament. Like, how is this happening that we have a top 5 player on tour who's not going to be at the major for clerical reasons? That is so stupid. Anyway, I've made my point. A few players are just simply not playing. Kona did drop due to some like injury issues, but then some players are just not coming. Nate Sexton won't be here. Caroline Henderson not playing. Sayananda, Jen Allen, all not in the field this weekend. We do have some people who are playing that we don't always see week in and week out. Haley King is playing. And most notably, Drew Gibson is back for the first time since LVC. He actually shot here pretty well here last year, Josh. Finished 10th, 9 shots back of Dickerson. So we'll see Drew for the first time in a long time.
Yeah, one credit real quick to Haley King, though. She's played every elite event this year. She's only missed
I don't know.
silver.
It's just I feel like mentally I still am not used to seeing her week in and week out.
Right.
And I have no problem with her skipping the silvers, and you're totally right.
Right. Well, I think it's...
And I'm remembering last year a little bit.
Last year, combined with the fact that she didn't play well in her past 2 events, so you just haven't seen her.
Yeah.
Right? She hasn't been on coverage. She hasn't... So,
good point.
She was gone last year, and now you're just not seeing her on the coverage. So that's, I think, why you felt that way. But you're right that Drew is back. Hopefully, that means he stays off Twitter a little bit more. He said, I saw on Twitter he's going to be playing something like 13 of the next 14 weekends or something. So hopefully he has a little less time to tweet.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about this course. So WR Jackson, designed by John Houck. It has undergone changes sort of outside of John Houck's purview over the last couple of years. And they've made the big change to 18. That's going to be as Nate talked about, it's going to be the biggest change out on the course. It sounds like they've tuned some of the FPO layout as well, which is good to hear because there were a few holes where it just wasn't really well tuned last year. But I think big picture, what is this course about? You think wooded course, and we all kind of have what comes to our mind for wooded course. This is not that, really. This is wide wooded fairways with the ability to shot shape. There is room to throw. Like, it's not going to... Heinold said they're going to be throwing fairway drivers. They're not going to be throwing putters and mid-ranges. This is not like a throw your like hyzer flip putter type shot. There's a couple holes like that. But a lot of the time you have to throw pretty hard. Like, the holes are still kind of long. It's not a short course by any stretch. And so it is demanding of players to be able to throw accurately straight. And then, of course, like shot shaping. But there's a little more width than your typical wooded course. And as a result, there's a lot less flukiness, Josh. This is not a fluky wooded course. There's ample room in the rough off the tree line to still scramble.
Yes.
There's plenty of space in the fairway. And yeah, sometimes there's a tree in a fairway, but it's to design 2 clear lanes. It's not just plinko. So that's why this course is well loved. And I think we're going to see this, become a course and a tournament that people really feel good about, because it just simply is one of the most unique and best put together wooded courses on the tour.
And I think the way that those kind of the rough could be described really is natural OB, right? It's not that you're going to have to just pitch out, but you can recover from it. It's not so devastating that you're just done, but it is punishing, right? If you do go OB, you're going to have to throw or pull out some sort of creative shot in order to recover or go OB, go in the rough. And that's something that I really like about it. You were talking, and this is, I think, the defining feature of this course. I'd love if we could pull up the map for hole 1. I think hole
Let's take a
one
look at it.
is very emblematic of how this course plays in general. Now, if you remember this is the one that has the ravine that goes down and then comes back up to start before it comes to that first corner that you can see on the map, indicated largely between the yellow and the orange distance markers here. You can go on the right side, but it is a tighter gap. If you want to throw a pure hyzer, that's the way to get the distance that clears all the way past the first grouping of trees about 300 feet out on the orange pin. Or you can play the left side that you either flex and hope that you still beat the trees and don't overturn it into the trees. Or what we'll see a lot of players do is throw the conservative shot, which is a forehand along the left side that then puts itself just right of that orange marker, still leaving yourself probably 60 feet longer than you would with a successful aggressive shot. Right there, hole one, 3 different shot shape choices there that you can choose to throw, whether it be the pure kind of flip up hyzer, the flex shot, or the forehand, with different levels of risk and different and varying levels of reward, as well as the types of risks that you're going to face. I love this hole. It is one of my favorite holes in general on tour when you come and look at what a wooded course could and should be. And I love a lot of things about this course. I think hole one does a great job of just highlighting that right off the bat. And I'm really excited to keep watching this weekend.
Time to start hole one reviews, Josh.
I don't know about that one.
And welcome to the Upshot. We're going to begin today's show with a review of all 18 holes on the course. Well, hole 7 for me is a 3, Josh.
Oh my gosh, that would be such a lot.
So
4-hour shows.
One of the things, you can't help but make comparisons to the Masters because of the time of year, because of the location, because it's the first major, all of these things. And Heinold was talking about how a lot of times it's the second shot that's the challenging shot. You get to the landing zone and then you got to really execute on that second shot in order to score. Hello, Masters. Like the Masters is like Augusta's known to be like the iron into the green number 1 course on tour.
Yep.
And so I think you can still get that vibe from this course. Now, I remember talking about this last year. It lacks a little bit of the like incredible manicuring of Augusta with the azaleas and the just like the perfectly pristine everything. It's a little bit more disc golf, but it has opportunities to continue to kind of build towards that in the future. I'd love to see them plant some rose bushes or some, like get some of that just incredible scenery onto the course, so that we can just enjoy that springtime energy. But I mean, the weather's going to be awesome this weekend, so we'll probably get some of that. I mean, weather report, Josh already mentioned we could have a little bit of rain on Saturday, but otherwise it's going to be just fantastic. 86 and bright sun on Thursday, 85 on Friday. It'll still be 80 degrees on Saturday, even with like about a 50% chance of rain in the afternoon. Sunday, 75 and light winds, and man, can't ask for better for major number 1.
You really can't. It's going to be great. And the humidity's not terrible either. I think it maxes out about 40 this weekend. So it's going to be great. So we've got picks to make, Charlie.
Well, before we get to picks, I just want to remind everybody. So Chris Dickerson is your defending champion.
Oh, yeah.
And of course, we all remember what happened on 18 and FPO last year. Chris Tatar had been in control of the tournament most of the way. And, had a chance to make a putt and seal it, missed it, airballed it. It hit a root and kind of rolled out to the edge of the circle. She missed the comebacker. Paige makes the putt and it's over. It doesn't even go to a playoff. So Paige kind of steals it at the last moment away from Kristen, which was, maybe the only like low point of the entire year for Kristen Tatar. I'm exaggerating a little bit, but not by much. And so Paige dealing with the injury, trying to defend. Kristen has been far and away the best player so far this season and will be a heavy favorite. I was saying this in the Discord, Josh. I'm pretty sure I would bet Kristen Tatar at minus 200 right now to win this tournament. That is to say, I would bet $20 to win 10.
There were people who were saying in the Discord that they would take even odds of Kristen versus the field as well. Well, that's
I would.
You just
I I would go heavy on that.
Just said that.
Yeah, I'm saying I would pay more to send me your emails, folks. Upshot at
No, please don't. Please, whatever you do. It's been a long week, guys.
It's all good. It's all good. So here's what I want to do. I'm going to give you the over-under first because I think it will maybe set us up for how you're thinking about your picks.
Okay, sick.
So your over-under is this. There's a lot of players who are seeking their first major, but I think none more so prominent than Calvin Heimberg and Simon Lizotte, who have both been fantastic over the last 18 months, but have never won a major. And so I ask you this. If you take their final placements at the end of this weekend and you add them together, is their total combined finish summed over under 14.5? For reference, last year, Calvin finished 3rd. Simon finished 35th.
I want to look at one thing really fast before I answer that question. Going over to Statmando, and we're going to pull up Simon Lizotte last year, just the majors.
Wasn't good, Josh.
I knew it wasn't good, but I couldn't remember quite how bad it was. Well, here's that answer, folks. His best finish at a major last year was at the European Open, where he took 16th. He then took 25th at Worlds, 35th at Champions Cup, and 57th at USDGC.
Yikes.
And the problem is, right, like USDGC, Worlds, those were in the midst of him winning, right? Champions Cup, you could say he was that was early in the season. He wasn't playing as well yet before he went on that crazy streak, and then just kept winning. But that was the middle of his best part of his season. Look, I want to say otherwise.
I will also note, Josh, just to give you something else to think about. He has played well at WR Jackson historically.
Hall of Fame Classic.
Not always, but he was second at Hall of Fame a couple years back.
2017,
like 5 years ago now.
2017, back 9. Go watch it if you haven't yet. I was putting it in the Discord.
That's the one. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
It only has Ricky on it. Simon and Paul come from elsewhere. So Ricky's the only one of those 3 listed on the Jomez video. So don't be fooled. But 2017 Hall of Fame Classic, final back 9. That's what you gotta go watch. But look, I really okay. Hold on. You ready for this? Let's keep. Give me 1 second. Okay, there it is. Oh gosh, of course it is. The last time he podiumed at a major was in 2018 at the Konopiste Open. Because of course it was.
It had to be Konopiste, Josh.
The last time he top 10'd at a major was in 2019 at Worlds and then European Open. He was 8th and 9th. I'm taking the over. I think they're going to do worse. Simon is too bad at the majors. And I hope he proves me wrong because that's all he's missing.
It's just kind of a weird fluke.
I just went back 5 years. The previous podium before Konopiste was back in 2017. He had 2 podiums in 2017. But disc golf, I mean, that's very, very, very different world, right? Like, I'm sorry. Sure. I want Simon to win a major. I would hate if Simon finishes his career without a major. But right now, just given his track record, I'm worried that his first major is going to be an MP40.
Has he not won any major, like quote unquote majors?
I didn't see one. I mean,
maybe not. I don't know if he played juniors back in the day or something. I don't even want to dare call those things majors anymore. They need a new classification.
They need to go away.
Yes. Drives me crazy.
Yes. AM Worlds, US AMs, those are not majors. Get rid of
those.
Those
are ZMs or something like that.
Sure.
I don't know.
Something. But But if we
Okay, so you're going over.
yeah.
Over
I'm going
14
over.
and a
I think
half.
they're going to do worse. Yeah, I just pulled it. Simon has no major of any kind. That includes MJ12, MJ1. He didn't play in
It's
these,
kind of
as it looks
insane
like.
when you think about that.
It is.
But all right, Josh, it's time to get to our picks. I'm pretty sure I made you go first last time.
Okay.
So I will get us started. I'm going to start an FPO because I just want to get it out of the way. It's not as interesting. I'm sorry. I'm taking Kristen to win.
Hey.
There's no world in which I couldn't take Kristen to win. I never say this. And,
You don't.
I've been in production meetings where, we're talking about before the broadcast, people are like, oh, Kristen's definitely going to win. I'm like, I pump the brakes. Like, there's plenty of players who could win. I just don't see a world in which Kristen doesn't win this weekend. I don't think I've ever been more confident about a player winning a major than as I am of Kristen winning this weekend. And that'll probably mean she won't win. But no, I just don't. Who's going to beat her? Paige is hurt. Like, does anybody have the goods? Like, Katrina hasn't been very sharp lately. I just don't see where it's coming from. But that's why we play the game. You know what? Sometimes you show up and you have a great weekend. In my 2 spot, I'm taking Katrina Allen.
Okay. So you
I
think if
think she
anybody's going to do it?
I think if anybody's going to do it, it's going to be Kat.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, I would normally say Paige. I mean, just to be clear.
Right.
But I can't take Paige right now. Not after the form that she's in dealing with the injury. I mean, and that's no knock. It's just, it is what it is. But I think Katrina is the only player who can kind of like match the all-around game that you need out here that Kristen has. And Katrina has it. I mean, it's not like Katrina is not capable of beating Kristen. We've seen her do it. It's definitely possible. Remember, like we watched Katrina beat a very in-form, excellent Kristen Tatar at Throw Pink just a few months ago.
Yes. Yep.
So I think Kat could do it. The way they're playing right now, it's hard to imagine. In third, I'm taking Sarah Hokum. She's going to do it again, folks. She podiumed here last year, and why not? We're back in the woods. This is a course where placement and control is very important. Distance is a little bit less emphasized. They've shortened up some of the holes that were a little too long. That plays great for players like Hokum, Scoggins, a number of players in the FPO field, frankly. So I'm going to go with Hokum in my 3 spot. Who you got, Josh?
The other thing about Hokum that's nice, she loves throwing fairway drivers. Right, she throws those all over the place. So I think it makes sense why you pick her and why she did so well here last year. I also have Kristen Tatar to win. Jogging. I have nothing else to add. Like I was talking to somebody the other day at a round, and they joked like, "Are you not gonna you gonna pick anybody but Kristen to win this year?" And I said, like, even if there are courses where I think Kristen might get beat, right, and I think there are other players who are going to do well, as long as Kristen keeps like podium and winning at the rate that she does, even if I'm wrong 50% of the time or 70% of the time, like it's still a ton of points from just picking Kristen. So, folks, for the foreseeable future, I'm still picking Kristen. In my 2 spot, though, I've got Owen Doggins. Owen played here really well last year, and we haven't talked about her as much this year, but I think that's kind of why she's primed to just slide up, especially with Paige out. Owen has the advantage, I think, with her forehand backhand combo to take advantage of the lines offered to her, and is also going to have a very high scramble percentage because she can just forehand out of dangerous spots that other players might struggle with if they don't have quite the same elite forehand. So I think, and the fairways are wide enough here that the lack of emphasis on distance and the room to play her flex shots means that I really like Owen for this course. Took 4th here last year. One of 4 players under par, we'll add. My final pick, though, goes to Missy Gannon. We've seen Missy play well this year already and have some the strong finishes with a couple podiums. Only missed the top 10 once this year. And she played okay here last year. Nothing great. But Missy is great in the woods, and big money Missy always shows up when at big moments. And so I think a pretty stale final round last year kept her from being a little further up. But I really like Missy Gannon for this course.
Just want to point out, Sarah Hokum has not missed a podium at WR Jackson since 2015.
Wow, that's a streak. That's cool.
Hall of Fame Classic, third, second, third, first, and then Champions Cup third. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, she's dialed.
Yeah.
Okay, we move to MPO. Josh.
Yep.
I'm excited. Let's go 3-1. I can't wait to hear you picking.
All right, in my third spot, I'm gonna pick Gannon Burr.
Makes sense.
Yeah, right. 5th place last year, 6 strokes off the lead. Has obviously played well this year. It's got the elite and the silver win. I think it's so interesting when you talk about MPO to try and like, especially right now, because the skill level of like Gannon and Calvin is so similar in so many ways, right? And they just feel so equally matched right now. Tice Price, Calvin's my 2 pick. If I probably should have said that before I started making that analysis, but I think what Gannon really has going for him here is the kind of routine putting for him at Circle's Edge. I think there is a large advantage at WR Jackson when you don't have to push to get inside the bullseye. If you are comfortable just playing to Circle's Edge because you know your putter is good enough to shoot it, whether it be from edge of circle 1 or short circle 2 putts, and that's your target, I think it takes a lot of pressure off to make the kind of hero shots that get people in trouble at WR Jackson. That putter is going to be essential. And even if his stats aren't significantly higher than anybody else this weekend, right? Other people probably will putt well too. The point is that Gannon is going to find a level of comfort. And I think that makes up for more strokes elsewhere in his driving because he doesn't feel the need to press to get inside the bullseye when he's scrambling or to make the crazy good drives. In my 2 pick, I go with Calvin. Calvin's putter has been much better this year. And that I think is going to alleviate, like I mentioned with Gannon, similar ways, that kind of pressure. I also think that Calvin, when you talk about players who are able to throw distance shots effortlessly, like Calvin is one of my top, right? Like Calvin throws distance on golf lines better than anybody else. And so disking down to a 9-speed, throwing, eagles or whatever else he's going to be throwing this weekend is something I think is very natural for Calvin and minimizes the mistakes and the detriment of his mistakes when he makes them. That kind of effortless golf distance means that he is going to, I think, have a distance advantage on this course, thanks to the style in which he obtains his distance. That means less strokes and less errors. And so I like Calvin. And remember, he was only 3 strokes off the lead, and he had a double bogey and a single bogey in the final round last year. And there are plenty of scorecards without bogeys. So he cleans up those few mistakes, which I really think his game is well suited for. And his putting's been better. I really like Calvin, but my number 1 pick, and I've chosen to go spicy with this one. I'm picking Kyle Klein. I said this in our way too early picks.
Wow.
Said it in our way too early picks that I liked Kyle Klein for this weekend. And I also said at North Cove that it felt like Kyle Klein could play well here. The USDGC-esque, and then he comes up leader for a while on the podium, plays really, really well. So here's my argument for Kyle Klein. Number 1, he is playing better early season golf than we saw him, significantly better than last year, right? He's on tour. He's and just seems to be much more in the rhythm already. Number 2, we've seen Kyle Klein play well in the woods. Remember his win that really broke him out, Idlewild, several years ago. So we know he can play well in the woods. Third is that we've seen him perform well at majors as well, right? He's come to the moment against Paul McBeth in a playoff at USDGC, which means he's been in this moment and has felt this and knows what it's like to be there. And then number 3, and I think this is really important. When you look at Kyle Klein's stats, there are 2 things that I think stick out to me. Number 1, on tour this season, he's 5th in Circle 2 in regulation, 68%. I think he's going to be in Circle 2 in regulation a lot, and he's a 30% Circle 2 putter, 84% Circle 1X putter. He's got the putter necessary playing there. He's 12th in Circle 1 in regulation as well. But here it is. Kyle Klein, number 1 this season in scramble percentage. 62% of the time when he's off the fairway, he is still saving par or better. And at WR Jackson, not only can you scramble to prevent bogeys pretty easily, but I think Kyle Klein's going to be scrambling into birdie situations here in places where other players are going to be conceding pars, and that's the difference at WR Jackson. So I picked Kyle Klein to win it.
That's a very bold pick. It's a bold pick. But it's not like we haven't seen Kyle right there at a major before. He easily could have taken that USDGC away from Paul. Okay, here we go. Starting in the 3 spot. I'm going with Paul Macbeth.
Whoa.
I cannot stop putting this guy on the podium, and he has not been delivering, but now it's a major.
It's a major.
And if he fails me here, I feel like I'm out for a while. At least until Worlds.
Until European Open?
Yeah, right. Yeah, he's lock podium at EO for me. Don't forget his insane. I mean, he shot one of the best rounds of the year in the final round here last year. To move him up the leaderboard into a non-competitive 9th. He was just a little off on his drives. I mean, it's a big thing. His putting was actually pretty good here last year. And right now his drives have been better and his putting has been worse. But I don't know. We'll just see. Can he find that next level now that we're at a major? I'm not sure that I've really seen enough from him to feel like he can get there. But then again, at this time last year, it was like Paul was like the guy. Everybody was like, oh, it's got to be Paul. It's got to be Paul. Paul was playing so great. And then he kind of no-showed a couple of rounds at Champions Cup. So we'll see. Maybe the tide will turn this time. In the 2 spot, I've actually made a late change, Josh.
Oh, okay.
I had Gannon Buhr winning, and I changed my mind. And now I have him in 2nd place.
Ooh.
I was looking at the stats from last year, and it kind of like made me a little bit hesitant.
Okay.
Because Gannon putted great last year, but his drives were, I mean, still well above the tournament average, but below the level.
Below
his tee to green performance was below the level of the top guys. And I feel like that's like a prerequisite for success out here. Now, he still finished tied for 5th. It wasn't a disaster. But it was his putter that was kind of keeping him alive. He shot 95 and 48.
Jeez.
In order to like pick up some of those extra strokes. But, you know, he was only 44% Circle 1 in regulation. The top guys were over 50%. So I just feel like there weren't quite enough opportunities. And his putter's been a little worse this year.
It has.
It's been a little worse this year. So obviously we just watched him win. we know he's capable. I won't be shocked if he wins, but I'm going to go with Vinny.
Oh,
I'm taking Calvin Heimberg to do it and get his first career major. Look, he was right there last year, Josh. He was right there. Tee to green was locked in. Putting was locked in. He's going to feel comfortable on this course, and you can't argue that he's not playing at a higher level so far this year right now. I think this course is so well suited for him. I mean, it's not quite as well suited as that Texas State's course where it was like, yeah, it's like super low ceiling. And, it's like, oh, like Calvin's probably going to win pretty comfortably. And then, yes, that's exactly what happened. But I just think that the style of golf that he plays is going to fit perfectly here at WR Jackson. His confidence has to be at an all-time high. And I feel like, he has been in it every single week. And I think that we saw last year that he was able to raise his level for this tournament. I think that happens again, but he's starting with a higher base. So to me, he's the guy to beat. He's the guy to beat right now. I know Gannon just won at at Blue Ridge, but it was crazy weather and weird bounces on that course. I don't take too much away from it, and I certainly don't take too much away from Music City Open, where just like the footing was weird. It's just such a different course. How can you really compare that very open layout to this very wooded layout? So give me Vinny, and to set him up for the clear front runner status for becoming the number one player in all of these ranking sets.
This means neither of us think Simon is going to podium, and neither of us think Chris Dickerson is going to even podium in his defense effort.
We're disrespecting Chris Dickerson right now.
Yeah, we are.
I don't know. He's just been a little off.
It's going to be interesting.
Even in Music City Open, when he had a couple of really, really nice rounds, he then laid an egg.
Yeah, he did. I am so excited for this weekend.
There's so many guys playing so good right now. I mean, maybe my Macbeth pick is going to look bad, but it's hard to think that putting Macbeth on the podium at a major is a bad plan.
Yeah.
Crazy. A little Josh yawn for you right at the end, folks.
Sorry, guys.
That is going to do it for today's show. We're super excited. Josh, I think we haven't actually discussed this, so we're going to hash it out here on the air. We should do at least a mid-tournament live check-in in the Discord.
Great.
If not a daily. Maybe we'll make a call depending on how things are going in the tournament and where we're at.
I can't do Thursday.
Fine. There it is. We're going to do a round. We're going to do a first 2-round check-in.
Yeah.
And then maybe we'll do a round 3 check-in, and we'll certainly have a rapid reacts on Sunday after the final round. So make sure you get yourself a subscription to follow along with all of our live rapid react shows in the Discord. And you can become a subscriber for less than $4 a month at discgolf.ultiworld.com/subscribe. Champions Cup coverage begins tomorrow. It'll be Terry Miller and Nate Doss on the call for MPO. And for FPO, it'll be myself alongside Val Jenkins, as well as Zoe Andike in the booth in Bend. So looking forward to it, and we'll talk to you all in the Discord this week.